Hi, friend. Are you ready to move into a leadership position? Do you have interests and ambitions that you want to pursue, but feel like you don't know how to take that next step? Maybe you want to start your own coaching or consulting agency. I'm Mel, and I help educators define their career path through correct mindset, knowing your options, and getting prepared for your career transition. I will show you how to level up your leadership skills, share your expertise in a new way, create impact on a larger scale, and put your leadership in motion. As an educator for over 20 years, I started to feel underused and like I had more to give. I knew when the time had come for me to leave the classroom and affect change on a larger level. Now, I'm ready to help you determine where your talents and skills mesh with your passions and interests. Put your leadership in motion and move into that next phase of your educational career journey. Let me help you define your career path by having the right mindset, knowing your options, and getting prepared for that next leadership position. So power up and put your leadership in motion. Welcome back to the show, everyone. I'm your host, Dr. Mel Vandevort, and today I have a special guest with me. I've known this guest for a while. We've never actually met in person, and this is actually the first time we've even talked, and she is on the other side of a screen, but that's okay because it's still semi in person. Today I have with me Rachelle Dené Poth from Pittsburgh. And Rachelle is the do-it-all person. She is an educator. She is an author, a speaker, a presenter, and she even has a law degree, which I find very fascinating. So welcome to the show, Rachelle. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and I'm just super excited to have you here today.
Yeah, well, I am excited to be here with you today to actually get to talk to you face to face because we have, like you said, we've known each other for so long. And that's one thing that I really love about connecting with people, like when you actually get to see them, even if it's not in person, but when you talk. So yeah, I'm excited to be here. So I teach you, you mentioned all the things that I do. I am a full-time teacher, a full-time consultant, love learning, have always loved learning, and keep busy with like, I need more extra hours in the day. And people always say, like, do you ever sleep? And I'm sure you probably hear the same thing. But I've been teaching for a long time, French and Spanish, technology course to 8th grade students, which I love because it takes me back to when I was in 8th grade.
Yes.
What we thought was like the cool tech back then. And it makes me excited for what they're going to see in terms of changes when they're my age, which they've got some time until that happens.
Right.
So, I keep busy because I don't want to miss opportunities, especially if that means I might miss an opportunity to help somebody else.
Exactly. I love that philosophy. And yes, we struggled to be here today. This is our 5th attempt. We've had to reschedule for various reasons. And so I'm glad that we're actually able to speak today because we were talking before that my electricity went out this morning. And I'm like, seriously, on this day of all days, when I'm supposed to finally get to talk to her and my electricity goes out, but it's back on. Hopefully it stays on because we've got some rain, and my audience knows that if it rains or the wind blows or the sun's out or it's May or a day that ends in Y, my internet goes out. So we'll see what happens. So,
right. Fingers crossed.
Yes. Fingers crossed. Definitely. So you have a lot of things, like you said, that are on your plate, but you do a lot of presentations. And I know just from watching you on social media that you do a lot of techie type work with schools. And that is one of the things that you do at your school, you said. And tell us a little bit about what that looks like for you. What is your role in all of the technology that schools partake in these days and times? I mean, there are so much. AI is another thing. Just tell us your role in that, and then maybe what your take on that is.
Yeah, well, it's kind of funny because, I mean, I've always loved technology, and teaching languages it's probably 14 years ago now. I started to just take the students to the computer lab because they didn't have all their devices like they do now. And I found some websites and they were doing some activities on their own. So having their own experiences. And then I never wanted a smart board because I just didn't get it. I'm like, why do I need this smart board? And then I ended up getting one. And then the kids were coming up out of their seats and, more interactive and more engaged. Mm-hmm. And then we saw all of these different awesome digital tools come into our schools. And I started to use a lot of them in my Spanish class. And it just so happened probably 10 years ago now, there was a conference that was having, educators doing presentations. And I had gone to a few conferences for language educators. And I always say I hate speaking in public. I get nervous about it. And people are like, right, but you talk all the time. And I said, yeah, I know. You have to start somewhere. But I was doing some presentations at those language conferences about just how I was using technology in my classroom, because some of the things were a little bit different and it wasn't kind of like what the norm was at the time. And so then I had a great idea to apply for some of my students to go to our state conference in Pennsylvania and participate in a STEAM showcase, well, a technology showcase, but part of the things could be STEAM also. Mm-hmm. And they were like, well, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I'm just going to stand over and just support you. And they said, well, aren't you doing a presentation? I said, oh, no, I'm not doing that. And they said, well, why should we? And I said, that's a great question, because if I'm asking you to do it, I should be willing to do it myself. So
wow, nothing like being called out like that.
Oh, yeah. That's one of many times I've been called out and left kind of like, oh, you know what? That's a good point.
Right.
And so I dove in and I really enjoyed it, because when I was in those like the very first session, I was super nervous. Of course, the tech didn't work. Mm-hmm. I didn't know to download it to PowerPoint slides as a backup. Like, I was clueless. But the teachers that were in there and my students in the back of the room, they were so supportive and mm-hmm. receptive to my ideas, but also they were engaged in sharing their own ideas. So I was like, I walked away, you go into those sessions as the presenter, but you also walk away as a learner. And that is something that I've seen even more with every type of PD training that I do, whether it's just in my own school or a webinar, because, there's so many virtual events for educators to join in, which is awesome because not everybody can make the trip if it's in person, the hybrid. But over the years, I've just been more passionate about, sharing what I know, even though I'm not an expert. And I say that all the time, but I always feel like if I can do some work that then I can share about the tech, especially with AI, because I've been working with that for like 7 years now, and make it easier for other educators, because I get it. There's never enough time. And there's so many things that we have to keep up with. And so I'm like, fine, if I can do it and I can get somebody else started and feeling comfortable with it, then that makes me happy. Mm-hmm. And if it means I get a little bit less sleep, that's fine, because somebody else is going to benefit from it. So it's just been exciting, especially in the last year and a half with AI. It's always been around, but it's just so everywhere now. And,
yes. And I think that's the thing, what you said, it's been around, and people don't realize that, because now we hear ChatGPT and all of these things, and they're like, oh, this new AI. No, it's not new. It's been around for a long time. That's, the internet.
Right.
There's everything it's definitely something that I think people are scared of, only because they hear more about it at this point in our lives, in the world, in history.
Yeah. And there are legitimate concerns when it comes to, with any technology use, because you're putting information in, you don't necessarily know, especially with schools, with privacy and all of, keeping our students and educators mm-hmm. and their families safe as well. But when it comes to AI, I think the big scare with the ChatGPT was nobody saw it coming necessarily, even though GPT was around for a couple of years. Because even back in 2020, I helped to do some research on it. I had never heard of it. And I was amazed at what it could do. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. And then to see all the changes since the launch of ChatGPT, mm-hmm. I think that there was so much fear behind it, like, oh, the kids are going to cheat, and all the plagiarism, copying, and loss of creativity. So I think it put up a wall for many educators, thinking like, well, I'm not going to use this. I don't know what to do, and there wasn't training in place, and administrators had a heavy lift also, because there wasn't a lot of information available when it mm-hmm. first came out. And so it's evolving, and there are still a lot of educators. I worked with some last week that had never tried ChatGPT as of August of 2024. And I was like, today's your day. Like you are
Yeah,
diving in.
exactly.
But the fears of technology, nothing different than when Google, the internet, the calculators, like all those things that we hear about, there's always been a way for students to get around doing their own work.
Yes.
And so it pushes us as educators to really think about what we're asking students to do, but also we have to help them figure out how to use these tools because they're going to need to know how to use them in whatever they do in the future. And so
Exactly.
who better than us?
Right. And I feel more creative I use some form of AI. I use ChatGPT almost every single day, but I use it through a platform called Ruby, which is a new AI tool where it's like it houses all kinds of AI.
Right.
So I use it through there because I can organize things in there and you can't organize in regular ChatGPT unless you want to pay for it. I guess I don't know. I've never paid for it. So
Yes.
I'm not really sure. But I find that it helps me be more creative because I will have an idea, but then I'm like, all right, I don't really know where to go with this. And so I'll like ask it to give me some different things on that idea. And it will give me things that I would never have thought of on my own necessarily. Or if I had, it would have taken me a long time to get there. Well, I don't have time building a business and doing all of that stuff. So I kind of feel like it kind of helps with creativity sometimes. Or, there will be something I'll be like, okay, I put in a prompt and I'm like, give me topics for this. And it will, or bullet points for this topic. And it will give me those top or bullet points. So then even for my podcast episodes, it gives me direction for that as well. And when I wrote my book, I had the framework. I just was having trouble getting things organized. And so putting that in there and getting that organization and helping with that organization was so helpful for me because I was able to write my book in 2 months, which if I had tried to do it with my ADHD brain and my all of the things that I have going on right now, it would have taken me probably a year to write it when I was able to write it in 2 months.
Yeah, it is a process. And I love what you said just about the way that you use it and like the creativity, because things that you may not have thought of. And I say, it's like a thought partner sometimes because everybody knows like in your school, the person that teaches next door to you down the hall, especially if you're in a big school versus like my school's not that big, that the people that teach downstairs, I can go weeks without seeing them. And finding time to go speak with a colleague to say, hey, I'm trying to teach this. I need some ideas. It's rare that happens unless it's set up into your schedule where you have like team meetings and that's not in a lot of schools. And so if you can go on to ChatGPT or one of the many others that are out there and ask for some help or ask for some feedback, it's really not that different than what you would ask a person. It's just, it's available and it's there for you and it's in how you use it. And, with educators, the biggest concern I get from educators, aside from that, is usually elementary educators because the kids are young. You don't want them using the technology and of course all the concerns, but I tell them that even you using some generative AI tool and creating an image and asking students to write about it, talk about it. What do you notice about it? Evaluate it. Like it's so quick because I don't know how elementary educators do it because they're teaching everything and they have so much. And where do you find the time? And when I've shared that example, there's an instant like a relief, like, oh, I didn't realize. And then when they see some of the tools, whether it's ChatGPT or one of the other platforms, and how quickly it can generate things. And even if you don't use the whole thing, it's good just to give you like a starting point. And so that's what I like about it too. Like I use it for, I'll type in random things. And when I use it for my classes, like my Spanish classes, a couple of times, I'm very transparent. And I say, all right, I made up 10 project ideas, 7 are mine, 7 are ChatGPT. Can you figure out which ones? And sometimes they can actually tell because they know me and what I come up with. And then they'll read one. They're like, well, that's kind of odd. Like, who would do that? And I'm like, well, that's ChatGPT's idea. So
Right. Yeah, exactly. So coming from a leadership standpoint, let's dig in a little bit more about what is leadership's role? Like you kind of touched on things a little bit, but let's really dig into leadership's role. Anybody who's an aspiring administrator or anybody who wants to lead from the classroom, what is their role in all of the AI? I mean, you did touch on it a little bit, but let's really talk more specifics about that role and what their responsibilities are.
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing that I've been saying to, I mean, anybody that I've been speaking to is, especially for administrators, is like, you don't have to do this on your own. You need to have a group that's comprised of people, classroom teachers, you name it, various people, not just you. And you also need some resources that you can go to. And so having a starting point, like for example, there's teachai.org. And for classroom educators, families, administrators, it's a collaboration between 4 organizations, code.org, ETS, ISTE, and Khan Academy. And so they are pulling in policies and guidelines and lots of different things that administrators and schools can go to. And they're keeping up to date with states that are now enacting laws and guidance within each of the states. And that is where I think they need to start. And saying, oh, well, we're not going to use any AI in school, then the students are most likely going to be using it outside of school. And they're not going to understand that they shouldn't say where they live, or that something that might seem to be no big deal in terms of private information is personally identifiable information that can be spread everywhere. So the best thing for administrators to do is have a space, discussions with people, families, students, educators. What are your concerns? What are some of the challenges? What are some of the good things? Like put the whole mix of it in, because I always say there's a lot of possibilities, but there's also a ton of responsibilities that come with it. And you have to be very careful with what you're bringing in, because a lot of educators now, if they're on social media, they're hearing about different tools and like, oh, I heard about this tool, and they just start using it and don't necessarily look at the privacy guidelines and the compliance.
Yes.
And that is something that really everybody is responsible for. And I always say, and I've been saying it more recently, I'm like, you shouldn't have to go on a scavenger hunt on a website to find out, like, are they storing your information? Are they sharing it with third parties? And so it does really take a team effort, but it comes down to training. I just finished my doctorate in May, and my focus was on the need for professional development for AI, but not just for like the classroom teachers, I mean, just for everybody, and also providing for families so that they know how to support the students at home. So it's a big topic. It's a big concern right now. And I'm seeing a lot of like a big increase. I mean, it's kind of shifting. There's still fear. I had a woman in a conference session back in March, and I said, what's the first thing you think of when you hear of AI? And there's like 5 answers I normally get, but she threw up both arms and it was like, danger, danger, danger. And at the end, and it was hilarious. And I've told this story so many times, but at the end of the session, I said, so are you still feeling like danger, danger, danger? And she said, no, it's more like danger, danger. And I said, all right. I said, that's a start. So, it's just listening and having the conversations and just being aware and looking to your state, because now, end of 2023, 2 states, California and Oregon, were the only 2 that had anything in place. And I think just the other day, Wisconsin, potentially, I could be wrong, but they were the 23rd state now to have something in place that now schools can actually look at in alignment with some of the other resources that are out there. So again, but it comes down to time also.
Right.
Like, how do you find the time? That's why you need a team that maybe is focused on that.
Right. And it's just a PLC team. Like you have PLC teams for everything else, curriculum and instruction, and you just need a team for that. And so you've got some amazing human capital in your building that love technology.
Oh yeah.
They would be your people that would just jump in that team and help you figure this stuff out. Definitely. So you had talked about ISTE. Not everybody may know what ISTE is. So can you give us a little bit of background and tell us what that stands for and everything?
Yeah, well, I also did not know what that was about 10 years ago.
You're right.
And when I started my master's, we had to part of it, you had to choose an organization, CSTA, the Computer Science Association, Computer Science Teachers Association. I'm probably not getting that right now. And then ISTE, which is ISTE, International Society for Technology and Education. And I looked at both websites to see, everything that I could learn about them. And ISTE resonated more with me because it had different professional learning networks, focused on different areas, early education, STEM. There was games and sims at the time. There was teacher education. And I think there were like 22. So I did join 10 years ago. And it really is a fantastic organization that offers a lot, especially with AI, because I took a course from them back in 2018, and they still have that course available. There are so many different ways you can learn and take courses on AI, but the fact that they are in collaboration with this other organization that is providing the resources, and that educators are involved in the process and really closely looking at what is out there and vetting the tools and whoever is in the AI space right now to support educators, and in different roles too, because it's not just for classroom teachers. They have for tech coaches and multiple other roles, because many of us have different roles we play in our schools. We're not only teaching one class. And so it really is an organization that a lot of people can go to find information about all things technology wise, and how to purposefully integrate it into your classroom, but also more so with the AI, especially.
They have standards, correct?
They do. Yep.
Okay.
And lots of standards. Right. And I use them in my class also, in addition to like Spanish standards, because I think about the use of technology and all of the things that students and us as adults, whether, personally, professionally, can use technology for. So people can refer to those as well.
I've always loved technology. And so when I was able to be a technology teacher in whatever capacity I was able to be, it was ISTE where I went to like get those standards, because I'm like, I don't know what kids at certain grade levels need to know and that kind of stuff, because, I'm 51. So like you said, when we played with some of our technology back when we were in 8th grade in high school, it was very like, what's the trail one, Pioneer Trail or what?
Oh yeah.
I don't even think that's what it was called, but yeah. So that's like the era I grew up in. And so I had a lot to learn, and I'm not scared of technology. I am all for trying whatever. And my philosophy is I can probably fix whatever I break. So just going to try it and see what happens. And so I was very adventurous and started looking for information and resources. And that's what I found was ISTE. And I never actually joined ISTE. I just used the anything free I could find, because I wasn't a full-time tech teacher. So I had other classes, high school English, and I did special education. That, like you said, when you're in a small district, you wear a lot of hats. And like there was one year where I was a lot of things. And so it was a good place to go and get some resources though, and some information to grow myself and know better how to help my students.
I absolutely agree.
I'm going to stop there for today because it's a very long episode and the next part is just as long. So I wanted to break it up into 2 episodes rather than one really long episode. I hope you enjoyed the first part of our conversation, and join us back here next Friday for the second half of my conversation with Dr. Rachelle Poth. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.